Hello, you're listening to the Saluki Gamescast. My name is Justin Young, and this is episode 66 for Friday, January 19th, 2022.
2022?
2024. What year am I in? Look, it's been a crazy week.
It has.
You are going to, if you're listening to this and you continue to listen to the podcasts that come after it, you're going to find out just how crazy it was, because this is like the third podcast we've recorded in less than a week. Yeah. And one of those podcasts was interrupted in the middle. You'll get to find out how in a very surprising and exciting way. Joining me, as always, is Alicia Utecht and OJ Duncan. And we have our special guest, Christina Ivey, joining us this week.
Yay.
And let's just go ahead and get into why Christina is here this week, why we are doing a third podcast episode within a week's time, which we did not intend to do. We have some changes coming to this podcast. So those of you who listen on a regular basis, you know that usually Mario is in our fourth seat. Mario is out. He had to go on a trip last minute and everything, so Mario will be back. But our one of our beloved founding members of this podcast, OJ, is leaving us for good reason. Mm-hmm. This is job related. OJ has a new job that's very exciting and everything.
Going to be more financially secure than any of the other grad students who are on this podcast.
And so we are super excited for OJ, but just not the time to do this podcast on a weekly basis anymore. So, OJ, I don't know if you have anything you would like to say?
I've really enjoyed doing the podcast. I really enjoy everyone who's been a part of it. I am very glad to have Christina replacing me, because I think it's a perfect replacement for me.
Yeah.
And I just want to say it to everyone who's been listening. Thank you. I want to say, Derek, I'm going to miss you. And
you got to give him one last chaos.
I was going to say, do we get a little for Derek?
Maybe we'll do it at the end of the episode. So my final sign off.
All right.
But yeah, I've had a really good time. I'll probably at some point be able to come in as like a guest to cover for somebody. But I'm really excited to be moving into a job and actually making money. And
That's the dream of every graduate student.
yeah.
That's the false hope we give every academic. Someday you'll make money.
Yeah. So I'm just really excited. It'll be... It's a 8 to 4:30 job.
Oh, God.
And so I'm not very good in mornings, so it's going to be a little rough for me.
But you get to be done at 4:30.
Yeah.
And go home. And just...
Well, okay, so allegedly, but because I'm working with the School of Medicine, the SIU School of Medicine, and I have a lot of service as part of my job, which I'm not doing any service that's unpaid anymore, because I stepped down from just about everything. So yeah, I'm very, very excited about that. But that includes evenings and weekends and trips to Springfield a lot and stuff, which I'm not complaining about. But it says 8 to 4:30 on my job description, but there's going to be a lot more. But it's going to be a very, very rewarding job, I think. Too, so I'm excited.
It definitely sounds like something that's up your alley.
Yeah.
Like you like to do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So.
I've said it before, and I'll say it again. We need good human beings in administration, and
Yes.
I'm very excited that that's where you're going.
Yeah.
And so for everyone at home, I'm going to be a program coordinator for the community health worker program at the School of Medicine at the Center for Family Medicine in Carbondale. So what a good portion of my job is going to be going to some high schools in the area with the Caravan, which is like a mobile medical unit. And we help provide resources to the young people in these high schools. They targeted the high schools that kind of needed it the most in the area. So we go and do that, do a little bit of medical care, testing, referrals, and stuff like that. And then the rest of it is going to be hiring and training community health workers to be able to go out into the community and do that same thing.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So I'm very, very, very excited about it.
And kids listening to this, because we assume there are children listening to this, which is why we are quite vulgar at times on here. if you're listening to this, there are jobs for people in communication. Like people who are good communicators, can get good jobs.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people need good communicators. Yeah, I mean, we'll talk a little bit more at the end of the show, but like it is a big loss to this show, and I think that's the way all of us feel, and like we are excited. And we'll talk to Christina here in a second, but we're excited, obviously, to have Christina joining us and everything. But it is a big loss to lose you specifically, or any of our current cast. So, but
sad for us, happy for you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we're obviously all very excited for you. We know this is for the best. And so, as OJ said, they are always welcome to come back and join us at any time. And we will always have we may not have an open seat, but we can always kick Mario out for a week if we need to. Mario's not here, so we can use him as our example. And
Like one of these days, Ryan will come back to visit too, and you'll get to beat them up in the parking lot one last time.
Yeah, we really need to film that for content for the website. Next time that can go up on our YouTube channel. Just the brutalizing. Yeah, one of you gets to come back to the podcast. Decide right now. Fight to the death.
And when we upload it, we'll make sure that it has Mortal Kombat 1 Switch graphics.
I'll just randomly have a hat that go on and off.
Your face peeling away. But yeah, so we're going to obviously miss OJ, and we're sad about that. But at the same time, we're very excited because that means we have a seat to fill, and we have Christina here who is going to be filling that seat going forward on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And if you listen to the podcast regularly, you've been on at least twice.
Yes, 2 or 3. I can't remember, but yeah, at least twice.
So you've heard Christina before and everything. Christina is a new faculty member this year, actually, here in the School of Communication Studies. And so we're very excited to have her. And Christina, you've introduced yourself before, but I don't know if you maybe want to talk a little bit.
Yeah, sure. I'm excited about this podcast because, with the transition and move, I haven't really had a lot of time to game. So this is this makes gaming, at least in my neurodivergent brain, now a part of my job. And so, I have to game in order to play more than just, my Dead by Daylight or my phone. I've been playing Project Makeover. Don't judge me. And so that's what I'm most excited about, is it is an excuse to game.
I will let you know that I use it as an excuse for myself as well.
Yes.
Same.
I have to set aside time each week to actually play video games and make sure I get time in. And I'm like, this is also like what I research and write about. And this is also what I teach. And so this is my job. When I'm sitting in my office playing a video game, I'm like, this is work.
This is also the dream of graduate students.
Yes.
Can confirm.
But we're very excited to have Christina, and obviously Mario will be back going forward. And so that will be our new crew for the foreseeable future and everything. We're very excited about that. And and we'll have recurring guests as well, as we always have, right? Because things come up, people can't be here for a particular week, and so we'll have people come in and fill in. And that'll be exciting as well, because it's always neat to hear from a diversity of voices on here. And Alicia, we finally have a second woman on the podcast for you.
We do.
Full time.
Oh, hey, hi.
I wasn't going to be the one to say it, but I was like, it is nice to not be the only girl on the podcast.
Well, it was always weird because you would be like, well, we never have a second woman on here. And I was like, well, we do, but it's Carly when you're not here.
Yeah. I was like, I don't think, aside from Christina, I don't think I've ever gotten to record an episode with another woman.
No, you and Carly were never on an episode together.
I don't think we were ever on an episode together.
That was not intentional.
Oh, no. It just was how things went. But
I think it's kind of indicative of the gaming community. It's like, we're there, but it's like dipping in and out, not just missing each other, basically.
I will say, like, our 4th episode ever is the women's conference.
Yeah, it's
talk
the
that
women's
we
conference
did.
panel talking about
So it is 3
women
women
in gaming.
on that
nice.
episode. And me. But like 3 women doing most of the talking, I think, for that episode. So that's good. Well, hopefully we can do that more and get more women. And like, again, hearing from a diversity of voices is always fun and exciting.
Yeah.
All right, well, why don't we just jump straight into what you've been playing? And Alicia, what have you been playing?
So I'm gonna kind of talk also just winter break because
Yeah. This is our first episode in a month.
Yeah,
So.
I'll say it's been a minute. But I guess starting with the quicker ones, like Power Wash Simulator, I've almost beaten the last bonus job, and I don't know what I'm gonna do when I'm done with that because like that's my chill happy game. I'm gonna throw on YouTube videos and play that, and so
It was our best chillaxing game, I think, of 2022.
I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was, and it deserved that. But so that I'm close to being done, and that makes me sad. I need more free DLC, please. Look, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth is coming out. Can we get another 7 remake era?
Shinra Tower.
Shinra Tower, please. Look, I would. I'm not going to say that actually.
I don't know where that was going.
I'm not going to say that actually. But so that's been a lot of like my chill, I'm watching something, but I need to do something at the same time. Another big one for me has been the Pokemon Violet DLC. Part 2 of the DLC came out over winter break, and then the epilogue released last week. So I talk a little bit about this when in the categories game of the year podcast that we did, but the DLC is just so good. It's so good. I love everything that they do with the characters. I love what's really fun about part 2 of the DLC is that it brings back double battles, which haven't been in the mainline Pokemon games for a minute. And like all even just the random NPCs that aren't the recurring character ones, the ones who you go and just battle once, are using competitive strats. They're using items, they're using weather setting, all kinds of stuff like that. So that was a lot of fun, being able to like actually have a challenge playing a mainline Pokemon game again. But I think the biggest one that I've played the most of has been Kirby's Return to Dreamland Deluxe. I got it as a Christmas present, and I am so freaking happy. It's just perfect.
Yeah, we talked about when we talked about that on one of the podcasts. I forget which one it was. You'll hear those next week. We'll talk a little bit more about that. But anyways, you talked about being really happy with the reimagining of that game because it has a whole new coat of paint on it. They redid all the graphics and everything. It's not a simple up-res.
Right. It's completely redone artwork. And, when the trailers first premiered, I didn't like the cel-shaded artwork. I thought it was distracting. But I can now say when you're playing the game, it works perfectly. It's not distracting at all. It's the pure adorableness of Kirby and friends. And I really love, this was one of those games that I missed when it was on the Wii, the original version, just because we didn't have money. But so now getting to play it and then going back and like watching a walkthrough of the Wii version as well, and being able to see like every moment that is perfectly recreated.
Right.
They recreate the dialogue, they recreate all of the expressions and cutscenes and everything, and getting to go beyond and see where they made changes. In the Switch game now, Magolor gets an epilogue where you're able to play as Magolor and go through and like have that little journey to regain all his powers, and it's so good. I am very much of the opinion that if Kirby doesn't spark joy in your life, nothing will, and I'm sorry.
I think it's also like the ideal version of a game to get a remake
Yeah.
because it was on the Wii, which was a system that sold like gangbusters, but like it was also a system that a lot of those non-motion games,
Yeah.
and I'm sure there were motion elements mixed in there, but like those games that played like more traditional video games,
Yeah.
I feel like really got overlooked in that generation.
Well, Return to Dreamland was definitely one of those. Like Return to Dreamland was in the back cycle. It was the idea for it started with Kirby 64.
Yeah.
Like it was originally supposed to be on the N64, and then it was supposed to be on the GameCube, and then it was on the Wii.
Right.
So it very much, like you said, it was not made for the Wii originally, and so it did a good job as opposed to like Mario Party 8, where I love Mario Party 8, but it's a hot mess in terms of motion controls versus like where it's clear that there was supposed to be a console handheld controller.
Right.
Yeah.
Return to Dreamland doesn't have like that messiness on the Wii, where they did keep it very easy because it's a Kirby game and they're meant to be easy and newcomer friendly. But it plays so well on the Switch. It looks so pretty, and again, it's Kirby. Like it doesn't get better than just an adorable little puffball.
Well, it makes me think of like there are other Wii games. Like the one that comes to mind is Punch Out for the Wii,
Yeah.
which is like an amazing game.
I love that game.
But I feel like a lot of people skip that game because it was on the Wii.
Yeah.
And a lot of people were like, oh, it's going to be another waggle game, right?
Yeah.
Like a lot of the Wii games. And that's a game that's so amazing looking. It's so gorgeous, like the animation and the character, the design in there, that I really wish they'd remake that game.
Same.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so good.
And, of course, I love the original. I like the original Punch Out quite a bit. Those are all great games, other than the horrible stereotypes. But like they're fantastic games, and it's kind of a shame to see games like that get lost on platforms of that nature, of no fault of the game itself. And so we've seen that with the Wii U. Lots of those Wii U games have been.
I'll say the Wii U games have had a renaissance.
Yeah, and I feel like there's some Wii games that could get similar treatment.
Yeah.
Yeah, I played Punch Out actually on the Wii U because I skipped it on the Wii, and then it was on sale when I was trying to pick up just new games, and I was like, okay, I'll try it, and I was like, oh, why did I not? It was so good.
I think a lot of people did that. That was just one of those games. So, all right. It sounds like you had a pretty busy break playing lots of different things.
I did. My break was entirely me ignoring all of the work that I should have done and playing Switch for 6 hours a day with my cat curled up on my lap.
The dream.
That's pretty rough.
I know. I really had a hard time over break. I'm telling you. I'm paying for it now because I got my prelim questions this morning, and my brain is mush. I don't know anything, but.
Well, that's why you take a break.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I mean, you have to be kind to yourself as an academic.
Yeah.
Like, allow your brain to detox from academia.
Yeah.
All right. That everything?
I think so. I probably played I played a little bit of House Flipper here. I probably played a couple of other games like here and there, but those are the big ones that. Yeah. So I was like, well, do I talk about? I guess I didn't really talk about the DLC epilogue for Pokemon Violet because that was interesting. But I think for now I'll just leave it at that was interesting because I think I might come back to it later and have.
It just needs to settle.
Yeah, have better feelings about some of the like wackiness of it.
The faces, like on the podcast, you can't really tell this. The faces that are also being made in these pauses are just chef's kiss.
You need some time to process it.
Yeah.
Yes. It went a little, I've praised Gen 9 this entire time for having the best story, and then the epilogue just kind of went for wacky. And I was like, I don't know how I feel about this. And then they released a YouTube video, like, telling the whole story, and I'm like, well, now you've got my heartstrings again. Why wasn't this part in the game? Why did we have the mochi dance?
All right. Christina, what have you been playing?
So since I am a new faculty member, this is really, I consider it my first big girl job. Again, that whole wish of graduate students to make money, I finally have a job. So I bought myself a PS5 for Christmas.
From Justin's great deal suggestion.
Yes. So thank you. So
Or curse you?
yeah, right now it's a thanks. I'll let you know when it switches to curse, or I just won't talk to you.
It's going to make for some weird episodes.
So I'm just now, like, I've watched obviously people play the Spider-Man 2, but I myself have not actually played it until I got because it came with my PS5. So I've gotten a chance to play that, and there's a reason why it's all on these lists of top games. It's so lovely. It was so beautiful to watch, but the actual like controls of it are so smooth, especially for someone who didn't play the original Spider-Man when it came out. So
So you haven't played that or Miles Morales?
No.
Okay.
Yeah. So this was my first Spider-Man game, and I can see why people like it. It was really nice. And then Chucky came out on DVD, and so I had to see what all of that was about. Chucky came out as the killer, and there was like rumors the entire time of DVD about Chucky coming out, because obviously to have a killer that tiny.
You're talking about Dead by Daylight.
Yes,
I definitely heard DVD, and I was like,
I thought you were talking about the TV show at first. And I was like, you bought the TV show? Cool.
I was like, what do we mean we're seeing what Chucky is about on DVD?
I
Wouldn't it be
appreciate
Blu-ray?
It's the game that I always end up talking about because I'm obsessed with it.
So Dead by Daylight.
Dead by Daylight, yes. So Chucky came out as a killer, and it was always rumored that he would, because he's such a huge part of the horror lore and franchise and stuff. But I was always like, there's no way, because he's less than 3 feet tall. He can't carry people, which is a huge part of the game. So they, first of all, they made it to where he's the first killer that doesn't just have strictly first-person perspective. So it's really kind of changed how killer mains really look at the game. It also has what's the guy's name technically him, Charles something, the serial killer that inhabits Chucky's body is what comes to life to carry people. So I thought it was kind of smart the way that they went about that. And then Alan Wake is now going to be a new survivor in the game. So I really like when they bleed over like that. It's really smart, I think, especially because of how popular that game was this year. I was like, good for you, Behavior, except for the fact that you've laid off like 50 folks, which we'll talk about later. And then the final game that I'm going back to like right now is Cult of the Lamb, because there's some new DLC coming out that looks really, really interesting, and I had a lot of fun playing it through the first like 3 times I played through it. So I wanted to go back and revisit so that I'm ready for the DLC coming up.
Yeah, I played that game last year, Cult of the Lamb, and I liked it quite a bit as well. I don't know that it made my top 10, but I think it was a honorable mention right outside my top 10 from last year. It's a good game.
Yeah. The art style is what gets me, I think. It's not necessarily I play it on PC, and so on PC, it's so much better on controller, and I'm too lazy sometimes to hook up my controller to the PC. It happens. My PlayStation is my downstairs game. My PC is my upstairs games. But it's a lot of fun, and especially because a lot of my studies end up getting into like religion sometimes. It was a fun, I don't know, satire parody of that. And the new DLC that's coming out it's called Sins of the Flesh, and it's adding where they can marry each other, and I'm going to let you take it from there if it's called Sins of the Flesh, where it goes from there. And also there's a lot more, I guess, infighting within the cult itself. So they've added this sort of interpersonal dynamic that wasn't necessarily there the first go around, and so I'm excited for it.
Yeah, that seems like it could be really interesting because that game, what made it interesting was all the like, okay, you can do this, but here are the negatives that are going to come with this. And so there was a real fun sense of weighing like the positives and negatives for every choice that you made in that game.
That's what made it replayable in my opinion. Like the first time I played it like a quote unquote like responsible cult leader, and the second time I was like, "F these people! Like, we're just gonna have one of those heathen cults." I don't know, and then the third time it was like, okay, what's the best blend of these two things? So I'm really excited that they're adding more of that to the game.
Let me ask you, since you're big into Dead by Daylight, have you played the Texas Chainsaw Massacre game that came out?
Okay, so no, I have not played it, but I watch a lot of the games that I don't get to play, right, on Twitch and stuff like that. I have opinions. Like,
okay.
It definitely, when it first came out, it looked amazing, and I think they're doing some good things with it, especially with having, in terms of like the asymmetrical horror games, they really are playing with having multiple killers and multiple survivors, because I think one of the things that can make Dead by Daylight unbalanced is if people are playing comms with survivors, so like being able to talk to each other. Now this allows for both killers and survivors to be able to do that. I think for me the problem comes with I don't know, the maps, I don't know. It's like they have to be like Dead by Daylight that updates so quickly in order for a game like that to have some survivability. And there were a lot of folks who normally play Dead by Daylight who were selling it as, oh, this is the game that's finally gonna, replace Dead by Daylight because it's so toxic, blah, blah, blah. No, just the same people went over to that game, so it was also toxic, right? It just, unfortunately, games like that attract a certain type of person. And so I thought it was great. I think it is definitely losing its momentum because they're not updating it as often, which makes sense because that universe basically doesn't have as many options as something like Dead by Daylight. So.
Right. Yeah, doing the more generic, like kind of horror game where you can bring in all these elements versus trying to stay true to the mythology of that game.
Sure.
It's pretty challenging.
And I really believe that that's what has saved Dead by Daylight is they come out with these big chapters each time, which brings that particular fan group into the mix. So I think that's the intelligence behind the game itself.
It's a lot like Fortnite.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, one of the things that's really clever about Fortnite and that has saved it as a live service game versus some other attempts into that market is anything goes in Fortnite. You can have Rihanna next to the, Energizer Bunny or like whatever. You can sell skins for whatever, and it makes sense in that goofy universe.
Yeah.
Whereas if you take something like, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, how do you sell skins for that?
Exactly.
Like, you can't put Rihanna in the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or the Energizer Bunny.
Whereas they've put Nick Cage in Dead by Daylight, right? I think that is...
Do they have actual Cannibal Shia LaBeouf?
Oh, dude, if they did. That would be the ultimate killer. So, Matthew Cote, if you just so happen to get his Cannibal Shia LaBeouf should be the next licensed killer.
Does anybody really want to work with Shia LaBeouf, though?
I mean, okay, fair. I mean, because Nick Cage, I'm sure, was a delight. Like, and they've also added, when they added, what is his name? Ash. They actually worked with the actor that played Ash.
Bruce Campbell.
Yes. I have no doubt that was a blast to do that. And they've had they had Jennifer Tilly come in because one of the skins for Chucky is his girlfriend. Poop. I really suck at names. But anyway, so his girlfriend is a skin, and they actually had Jennifer Tilly come in and do her voices for it. So it's really a lot of fun, and as toxic as the game can get, it.
And you're talking about players when you call it toxic, not the game itself.
Yeah, not the game itself. I mean, people talk about how sometimes it cannot be balanced, but honestly, like it's the players, and it's players who are trying to make the game more competitive than it needs to be. And I'm like, you should go on the competitive side of things, which is up and growing. But yeah.
That's really interesting because that's one of those games. I haven't played Dead by Daylight. I played quite a bit of the Friday the 13th game.
Oh yeah, I did too. Yeah,
it kind of kicked off the asymmetrical horror games. There was probably something prior to that, but like that was the big one I remember.
That's the one. And see, I was watching DBD or Dead by Daylight, and then I started seeing the Friday the 13th game. So
maybe Dead by Daylight predates it. I can't remember the chronology there, but yeah, I got really into playing that game a lot. And one of the things I really liked about that game was that it did have offline play.
Yeah.
And so you could play with bots and everything, which to me was a lot more fun. Like, I don't like online games a lot of times if I'm not playing with friends because so many people are, as you say, toxic.
Yeah.
You know, and they're just not fun to play with.
And I think Dead by Daylight has finally picked up on that, and they now have where you can play with bots.
Oh, really?
And which was good for me because I started off as a survivor main, and I wanted to try playing killer, but there's no way I was going to let survivors bully me. I was like, no. And so now it's great that I can play with bots because I can practice playing the killer before I play against actual people who will kick my butt. Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think that just makes those games more accessible for a lot of people. Like, because that's always the intimidation of picking up one of those online games is, am I going to just are people going to yell at me because I'm not very good? I don't know the layout of the map. And like, is there a way I can practice this so at least I have some concept of what I'm doing before I go in the first time?
Especially Dead by Daylight, because again, if you haven't played it, like the way that I just turned on Twitch, turned on the first game that was on, which was Dead by Daylight, and I sat there and I very much felt like an ethnographer going through and trying to figure out how to play the game through watching other people. And it can be rather complicated if you've never experienced playing an asymmetrical horror, and then two, if you don't understand what it is you're supposed to be doing, and then once you start playing, on top of that, all of the different controls are kind of complicated. So they've tried to like add aspects of the game that that walk you through like doing it in a tutorial. That's the word I'm looking for. The tutorial for it is actually pretty smart. The only problem is it ends abruptly and doesn't put you in like a real world scenario, real in-game scenario. But yeah, they're trying to work around that. Definitely adding some exciting stuff. So I will continue to be obsessed with it and continue to talk about it on this podcast.
Well, good. We welcome that because that's not something any of us have talked about. So it's always good to have somebody bring in something new. Yeah, my favorite memory of playing the Friday the 13th game is we did it one year for Playing for Pets on Friday the 13th. So it's
That's
like
great.
at midnight, we're in a dark theater playing this on like a giant screen. And and it's just fantastic, like to play that way. I mean, I understand it's not everyone's cup of tea because people are getting impelled and stuff. but
even as someone who would probably cry in that situation, I still think that that's incredible. Like being able to play it at midnight on Friday the 13th on the theater, like you wouldn't catch me in that room because I would cry, but but I can look at that and say that's freaking awesome.
I think a lot of that game, and it's they did a lot of fan service in that game, like with the different skins and different players. And so it's a real shame that game got caught up in rights debates and everything that really shut it down. But
I mean, and that's the reason why Dead by Daylight hasn't picked up Jason, is because there's a lot of rights back and forth struggle between who actually owns it.
Yeah, and even like who owns little kid Jason? Who owns adult Jason?
Exactly.
Jason in a hockey mask, Jason not in a hockey mask. It's like insane. So cool. Like I'm excited to hear more about Dead by Daylight as we go along. So OJ, what have you been playing?
Okay, so strap in because for the first time in decades, I had a month with nothing to, well, I mean, I had things I should have been doing, as Christina's looking at me. But I did spend the last month sitting and playing video games. Again, for the first time in decades since I was a teenager. Because I'm starting this new job and my other job ended. And then so I just had a month and I quit all of my service obligations. So I was just sitting at home playing video games. So you're going to hear a lot today.
A proper send-off.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it's hard being on a podcast with your advisor talking about video games. I promise, this break, no, it was good for you.
Okay, so game number 1 that I want to talk about is Slay the Spire. It's really a fantastic game. There's different characters that kind of play a little differently, but it's like a card, is it a deck building game?
Yeah.
I always forget the term for it. And so it's like, as you're going through these different levels, you fight enemies and then you get like a new card after every enemy, or there are like events that happen and you can get relics that help you through. And I really sucked at it at first. I was just trying to, I was like, there's initially 3 stages essentially with a bunch of levels on them. And I would get past the first one maybe, but the second one I was having trouble. But then I finally just played around with some cards and got some strategy in, and then, made it to the end with all of them. Then they opened up a 4th one, which I don't know if I'll ever beat it, but the 4th one is rough. But I really love the variety of cards that each of the different characters has, and the essentially just the different ways that they work. Like, I always love a game where you can just and when I played EverQuest, we'd call it root rot.
Oh yeah.
But where you can just poison somebody and have them die. And so one of the characters is really, really good at that.
Toxic stall.
Yeah, yeah. Another character is you build up block and then body slam them, so you're using your block as damage, and it's really a really fun game. It's on Game Pass now. If anyone wants to try it out, it's pretty awesome.
I remember a year ago, one of my favorite Twitch streamers got really into Slay the Spire, and just watching it, I was like, I don't know how you're doing this, but this is awesome.
Once you really figure out how the cards work together with each other, it's fantastic. I really love it. You can feel really super strong until you get to that 4th boss, and then you're just done.
I think it was a game that always sort of intimidated me because I traditionally haven't played a lot of card games. So it was looking at it from the outside, it was like, oh, is this going to be like Magic the Gathering? Am I going to have to get a second degree in understanding this game? Or is it going to be more accessible like Marvel Snap, which is really easy to pick up and play?
Yeah, it's very accessible. Not as accessible as Marvel Snap, but it is very accessible. I was frustrated. I was losing right at the beginning, but it was also easy to learn as I went along.
Okay, that sounds good.
And then it was a really good build up. So it wasn't just I ran in and demolished everything. I don't think you can, because you unlock cards and relics as you go on. But I would suggest trying it out.
Okay.
Don't be too intimidated by it. Second game is, I think, I talked about this before, Diablo 4. I was playing a lot of it. They had a winter event, and there's a vampire event in the season right now. That I think it's over next week. And so the new season, or not the new season. Well, yeah, a new season in this season will start, I guess.
A new sub-season.
Yeah. And so played through with Sorcerer. Really, because in every Diablo I've been some type of sorcerer.
Yeah, makes sense.
And I was ice orb sorcerer essentially anytime I could in the other games. It wasn't working that well in this one, and then so I checked out some other leveling and end game builds, and oh my goodness, there's a ball lightning build that's broken, legitimately broken. Because apparently the ball lightning does damage over time, but it is doing damage in milliseconds rather than seconds. And then ball lightning usually goes straight out, but there's an ability you can get that makes it circle around you.
Oh wow!
And then if it hits someone in crits, which it's hitting over and over again, so it crits a lot. Little balls of lightning pop up that you collect to get MP, and so ball lightning is like the most expensive thing, resource wise. But when you get all of this coming back, and if you evade through an enemy with another ability, you get MP back. You can have like 20 of these circling you,
Dang.
like I have killed bosses that were way above my level. It would have taken like 4 or 5 other people, I think, and I just took them out in seconds. Like I went to nightmare dungeons, and I was like, so they go up to level 100, the nightmare dungeons, and so the enemies are leveled over you. And I didn't realize that I wasn't supposed to be jumping up to like 70 or 80 right when I started doing the nightmare dungeons. and I was just running through and just destroying everything in them. So
I need to take notes of this because my little necromancer, like I've had to pair up with other people to get through stuff like that. So I need to write down what this is.
Yeah, so I was 75 when I killed Uber Lilith by myself.
Jesus.
Yeah. So it's ridiculous. You might want to roll a sorcerer.
Sorcerer, lightning bolts, broken. Got it.
And Blizzard said that they're not gonna fix it. They're like, we'll just let people have fun. And I was like, okay, good.
I love
nice.
that. Yeah.
But yeah, sorcerers have been very, very powerful in other Diablo games. This beats anything I've ever seen in any Diablo game. So I'm having fun with that. Okay. Baldur's Gate 3, which I like. There was so much hype, and I was trying not to like expect too much out of it, but it's a fantastic game. I am playing it on a console though, which means that it's kind of frustrating going through inventory. And like the radials when I'm using different abilities, it's hard to get them set up on a console. So that's frustrating. But the game as a whole, I really, really love. I haven't fucked the bear yet, but I'm on the way. And so Christina's
I have
face.
no doubt. I assume as soon as you posted on Facebook that you were playing the game, I was like, oh, well, I know what OJ's specking towards.
Yeah.
I just thought it was a gay joke, and I was like, yeah.
So both. He's a bear when he's not a bear.
Oh my god.
So it's both.
Is this a speedrun category yet?
It should be.
Bear down.
Yeah. And I'm playing a bard. I don't usually play bards, but I just kind of wanted, I was like, you know what, that looks interesting. And a friend of mine was saying, oh, you should play bard. So I'm playing as a bard. It's really interesting, being able to use bardic persuasion. And really, the graphics are fantastic. I made my character very hot, which, I mean, every character is
when
essentially very hot.
When you're trying to woo a bear, I'm assuming
I know.
that's what you need.
I know.
Really? Because I have no idea what would attract a bear. Like plump?
So here's Bear 101. There's multiple different types of bears. There's muscle bears. There's daddy bears. There's like feeder eater bears.
There's mama bear. There's baby bear.
You have to find the space that's just right.
Yeah, there's
Can't be too
polar
hot
bears.
or too cold.
Apparently Goldilocks is what it is.
Yes.
Some bears, actually.
Yeah. That would be a clown chaser bear, maybe. We'll see. And so
There's so many mixed metaphors in this discussion.
Yeah. So
All the queer people are like,
Yeah. So you're getting a gay 101.
The animal rights people are very
Otters.
PETA, send your email to Justin.Young.
Yeah. I was an otter for most of my life.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm not anymore. And so there's multiple ways to catch a bear.
PETA, send your hate mail to justin.young@sau.edu.
You can tell I'm excited because I just spit across the table when I laughed. But yeah, so unintentionally, which I think you can woo multiple people. I'm not sure. Unintentionally, though, a very thirsty wizard is all over me, and I think we might bang before me and the bear.
That's also very much like a queer love story.
Yeah.
I fell in love with a wizard.
Yeah.
A very thirsty wizard.
Yeah, he's very
A thirsty
very
wizard
thirsty.
fell in love with me, but I'm after the bear.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and so. But it's going pretty good. I'm not like super far into it, but I like the story so far. There's so many choices, and so it's interesting. I know I'm gonna be able to play through it again and do a bunch of different choices. But it's really excited. I'm okay with it being game of the year, but I really wish that the controls were different for the inventory. It's just rough. Okay, so next, I've talked about this a lot more, but I've been playing a lot of Castlevania Harmony of Despair. Now that I have it on Xbox, I have all of the DLC, and I really, really, really love it. But I've talked about it a lot before, so I'll just say that. For the first time, I played Alan Wake.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm a little bit through it, but I just keep on getting frustrated because I'm not sure what I'm supposed. I know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And I have to you have to shine a flashlight and then you have to attack them. But I keep on getting hit by 30 different enemies and I don't know what I'm doing. But I think I'm trying to run through to get to light to be protected, and then so there's a bunch of different ones that come after me. So then I stopped playing, but I'm gonna go back to it.
Yeah.
I like the game. I like the idea of the game. But it's that the controls are a little dated, it feels like to me. But I want to do that because I've heard Alan Wake 2 is so good that I really want to play that one. There's a game called Dicey Dungeons that is free on Game Pass that I'm playing. Yeah. And it's really fun. There's different characters again with different abilities that you play in, but you all get turned into dice as you start the dungeon. And then it's kind of like, it's not like a card builder, but you pick up little cards and you have to roll dice.
Okay. Yeah, I watched a streamer play through this like a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. It's a lot of fun.
It really is. And some of the characters are kind of difficult to get through. And then there's bonus levels and then hard bonus levels, and it's this is rough. But I'm really enjoying going through and playing it. It's fun when I'm getting ready to go to sleep, and so I don't have to focus too much on anything. Then we talked about this I think before in the game of the year a little bit. I was playing Dead Cells again, which I played Dead Cells right when it came out. I had it on Steam, was playing it on the PC. Really enjoyed it, but then stopped playing. Now I came back with all of the DLC, and it's fantastic. It feels like Dead Cells, but it also feels like a whole different game just because there's so much new stuff in it. But I really am enjoying every bit of it. I went through everything. I haven't finished. I only went through the Castlevania DLC part once, but I enjoyed what I went through, and I'm ready to go through and do the rest of them. I just haven't had. So I'm about to move, and my TV died. So I don't want to buy a new TV and get it set up and then have to take it down and move. So I've been playing on a computer monitor mostly, which is much smaller, and I don't get the same thing with Dead Cells with it. Some of the games are easier, but Dead Cells is kind of rough playing on that.
I would agree with you on Dead Cells, just to jump in here real quick, that you play that original game, which I did, whenever that came out 3 or 4 years ago. And it was a fantastic game. And then Castlevania got me to come back and invest in a lot of the DLC. And it really does feel like almost like 2.0 of the game, right? It's such an expanded experience to play through with all the DLC in there. And it is, that's just a fantastic game. If you've never played it, there's never been a better time to play Dead Cells.
Right. And it's free on Game Pass right now with all the DLC, I think.
Is all the DLC included?
Yeah.
Okay.
Did I I might have bought it now that well, I'm not sure. But no, I think all the DLC was a part of it.
We're not positive if this is OJ's great deal of the week or not.
It might be.
We'll see. As I tell people, and they accidentally have to pay for all of the DLC. But,
it's worth it, though. Especially
really
if you can get all that on sale. It is entirely worth to invest in.
Yeah, and it with all of the DLC, it feels like more like a new game, like a part 2 type thing that was to me, because it's true to the game, but there's a bunch of new stuff. It's fantastic. Then I played a little bit of a game called Escape Academy, which is essentially just escape rooms.
Yep.
And I really like that. I love escape rooms, and I love escape room games, in person and video.
That's a really good one too. I really like it. I like the leveling in it feels really natural and stuff. So yeah, that's a great one.
I think I talked about that maybe last summer sometime.
Yeah,
It sounds familiar to me.
Yeah.
I was gonna say I thought you did, or I knew somebody did.
It's fun.
Yeah. Really enjoying that. I been playing Tunic, which again I know you talked about a lot, Justin.
Yeah.
And really, really enjoying it, but the beginning was frustrating. Which a lot of games, because I'm not good at games, really. I'm good enough to get by, but I'm not good. And then so when there's a first real challenge in a game, I'm just like, oh. And then I'll learn eventually. I won't be super good, but I'll learn to get past. And then so Tunic has had a few different times like that, but I have a shield now, and and some other stuff. So I went through, and it's become much easier.
To me, Tunic is an experience that gets better the more you play into it.
Yeah.
It's one of those games, the more that it reveals of what's going on in that game, the more you go, oh, I get it. I get why people love this game so much.
Yeah. And there's something from the very beginning that I interpreted wrong in the book that it made my life better when I figured out that it was real. And this is very close to the beginning, so I don't feel like it's a spoiler for anybody. But so if you hit the button to dodge roll and you hold the button down, you can run. But it just said to hit A and hold A in the little book. So I would hit it and hold it and just be standing there, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. And then so I just glossed over it, and I would then I would keep dodge rolling, and I would run out of stamina and take more damage. But then when I realized, oh, I can run when I'm holding this button, it became much easier. Much easier. So that one was totally on me for interpreting it wrong. But it's a really, really fantastic game, and also free on Game Pass. So that's what I went through Game Pass, and I was like, oh, I like that. Oh, that looks good. That looks good. That looks good.
Yeah.
That's the thing about Tunic for those listening. Tunic, you basically can do everything right from the beginning of the game and go everywhere, but you don't know that, and you figure out how open the game is and the abilities that you have by collecting pages of the instruction manual as you go along. And so the game is constantly sort of changing your perspective on how you are playing it and how you can access different elements of the game. So that's why I say it's a game that gets more interesting as you go along.
Yeah. And now that I'm a little better at interpreting the manual, because it's not all in English, it is in its own language. But yeah, it's a really good game. And then finally, I haven't been very far in it, but I know you were talking about House Flipper before, so that was on Game Pass, so I downloaded it, went through a few things, and it's definitely fun. I'm going to be playing through it a lot more too. But yeah, I haven't gotten very far in it. But a guy was like, if you don't put in these radiators correctly, I'm not going to pay you. And I was like, you're going to pay me. I will call the House Flipper police. But yeah, so I only played a little bit of that one, but I'm very, very, very excited to play more of it.
It's a good chill game. And I think I wrote this on my top 10 games for this year, but I'm like, there's just something really satisfying too, especially when you have when you are to the point where you're buying houses and then selling them as opposed to just going in and doing jobs for people. And there's something really satisfying about having a terrible day and then getting home and just demolishing the walls.
Yeah, because I haven't bought one yet. I think I have enough money right now to buy one. So I think that's what I'm going to be doing pretty soon. I'm very excited to start doing that though.
If you want my Excel spreadsheet that has all of the information about what every buyer wants, I will send it to you.
You should probably send that to
me. That's a game I really enjoyed quite a bit, and I'm excited because they've released part 2 now.
Yes.
Which I don't feel like I heard a whole lot of discussion because it came out in December.
It came out December 27th.
Okay.
Or something like that. It came out after Christmas.
Okay, I knew it was in December sometime, and so I want to get around and try it because I did really enjoy that first game. I fell off eventually, but I didn't play all the DLC and everything that they have in there. But that base game is really quite enjoyable.
Yeah, and like it's really nice, especially now that I have sold to every person. Where I'm like, okay, I know I'm just gonna have fun. Like I'm not worrying about, I have to make it pink for this guy because I want to sell to him and he's annoying to try and sell to or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good sandbox game to sort of like, I'm going to redo this house the way I would want this house to look.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay. And so that's all that I have this time. I mean, it's just a tiny little bit of gameplay, but
just a touch.
yeah.
No, I feel like everybody has a laundry list of games to talk about. This is what happens when we don't do an episode for a month.
Yeah, I know, right?
And people actually have free time.
Yeah.
People aren't taking classes or teaching classes. All right. So I'm not going to talk about everything that I've played. If you want to listen to the Game of the Year podcast, I go into some of those games that I played over break. I will talk about one here because it was the one that in the Game of the Year podcast I talk about and nobody had heard of even, and that's Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew. So Shadow Gambit: The Cursed Crew is a sort of an XCOM-like strategy game, except it is set in a pirate universe that is a very clear takeoff of the Pirates of the Caribbean. Particularly the movies. So you have this sort of, tropical Caribbean pirate world, but there's also like a supernatural element going on in it as well. I talk about this on the Game of the Year podcast, but the thing that really makes that game for me is the just level design in it. Like they make these amazing looking little dioramas of levels that you just want to explore. You want to just like, oh, can I be shrunk down and walk around inside this world? It's really cool looking. And I think that's one of the things that always sells me on a game is if it can have interesting level design. Mm-hmm. Like I can get over the average gameplay if there's really interesting levels for me to explore. Because to me, that's part of the fun of video games, right? Is that it allows me to go somewhere I've never been before and experience something I've never experienced before. And so this game does that in a, like I love that first Pirates of the Caribbean movie. I'm not the biggest fan as the series progresses. And I just always thought like, oh yeah, that's really cool. Like, zombie pirates, undead pirates, like what a cool, like, mashup to do and everything, and they do it so well in that first film, and of course in the ride as well. I always loved the ride as a kid. So that's really exciting, and so I would recommend that to people. That is a studio that actually shut down after they shipped that game. They shut down basically. I believe the story was that just the stress of running an independent studio got to be too much for them. So it's a game I'm happy to support because obviously these guys were doing this labor of love in developing these games. And there certainly apparently was not the money or the work-life balance in it, which sounds like what they actually shut down over. So like go out and enjoy that game if you get a chance. But I did talk about some other games, including Baldur's Gate and a few others, RoboCop. During the Game of the Year podcast. Those Game of the Year podcasts, we're recording this on Friday. Hopefully the episode will get up on Friday. And then the plan is for next week, Monday through Thursday, to post those two podcasts. We also have several Game of the Year lists from the host of this podcast, but also from various different guests who have contributed those lists. So all of that will go up on the website and on our social media over the next week. And then the plan is to be back next Friday, record a regular episode of this podcast. All of that has probably sounds weird if you listen to this and then listen to the podcast for Game of the Year, because we're kind of talking about, we're doing this before we do any normal episodes. And that all got kind of delayed by obviously the changes we talked about at the top of this podcast with OJ taking on the new job. And we really wanted to get in one final episode with OJ before they left and took on the new position. So all of that will go up next week, and pretty excited to have that all go up on the website. That's always fun, and it gets people. I know last year when we put that up, I had several people go, "Oh yeah, I hadn't heard of that game. I want to go try that game out." And so that's always our goal with the Game of the Year stuff, is to really expose people to games that they haven't heard of, and get people trying new types of games. All right, all that being said, let's move on to the news. And we actually have a fair amount of news since we've been off for a month. We'll start off with the news that broke yesterday. So there was an Xbox Developer Direct, which Xbox has different names every time they do a show. It feels like it has a different name. So I never know what this one is going to be versus this one, or what it means.
They went E3. How about D2?
The big game that came out of this, they announced beforehand they would be showing it, but they showed off their new Indiana Jones game, Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. This is by Machine Games, the people who made the Wolfenstein games, the new Wolfenstein games. They announced that this will release this year on Xbox S and X and PC. Harrison Ford is lending his likeness to the game, but Troy Baker is doing the voice. That's probably for the best. Harrison Ford does not sound like young Indiana Jones anymore.
I just remember when Kingdom of the Crystal Skull came out, and everyone looking at Harrison Ford and being like, Disney, please let him retire. And how long ago was that?
And then 20 years later, let's do another movie.
Yeah. So I'm like, okay, I'm glad that he gets to retire somewhat.
Yeah. So they are using the image. This is young Indy. This is, I think they said, taking place between Raiders and Last Crusade. So to give you kind of a time period for it. And the big revelation of the trailer was that this game is going to be primarily played in first person. So they said it will switch to third person with some action parts, and where you're like swinging and that sort of thing. But primarily most of the game will be played in first person. You do have your whip, you do have your pistol. I think most people expected this game would be a third person game.
Did Harrison Ford say, like, you can use my likeness for 15% of the game?
Well, it's kind of a weird thing because, like, obviously Tomb Raider and Uncharted are heavily inspired by Indiana Jones. Like, I remember playing the first Tomb Raider and going, it's like they made an Indiana Jones video game.
Yeah.
And, Uncharted even more so, I think, leans into that. And so you kind of go, well, that's obvious. You do that with an Indiana Jones game. But then you hire Machine Games to make it, and Machine Games is highly skilled at making first-person games. Like the Wolfenstein games are, Wolfenstein 2 is a bona fide classic in my book. And you go, you have to think, like, well, what kind of game are they going to make?
Right.
So it sort of makes sense to make a first-person game, but yeah, it's weird. I talked to a friend last night about it, and her reaction was, well, I'm playing Indiana Jones. I want to see Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
Like, it's...
Like, I want to know that I'm playing Indiana Jones rather than Uncharted or Tomb Raider.
Right. Like, would you want a first-person Gollum game? Do you want a third-person Gollum game? But if you're going to get this IP, right, it's always kind of weird to get this IP and then hide the IP.
Yeah.
Behind a first-person perspective.
We could be playing... I was going to say Hannah Montana, but...
Hannah Montana, great adventure.
Yeah. Hannah Montana with a whip and pistol, Yeah.
I don't know. That seems dangerous. Miley Cyrus with a whip and pistol. So, the game looks really good. If you watch the trailer, it looks very good. It certainly shows you like whipping people and pulling them towards you and then punching them out like Indiana Jones does in the movies. And so that looks very exciting. It shows him using the whip to like swing across chasms and that sort of thing. But I will say that I'm somewhat less interested in this game, seeing that it's first person. Just because first person adventuring is very challenging.
Yeah.
I feel like the game that got that most right is Metroid Prime, and nobody has really topped them in the 20 years since that game came out.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that game they did announce that game is coming out this year. So that'll be a big game. They showed off a new trailer for Avowed that is also coming out this year, this fall. They said Avowed is their fantasy adventure game from Obsidian. I think the thing that stands out most about it is you actually use a wand and cast spells. You're not doing that freehand. I'm pretty sure it's like, just the animation and everything of it. But it looks like Hogwarts Legacy. If you have problems with J.K. Rowling, you can play Avowed instead. And the thing that looked really neat about that trailer is the animation of the enemies that you were fighting. Looked really like neat designs and neat animation to them and everything. So a very pretty, neat looking game if you're into those sort of fantasy magic games. They showed off a new trailer for Sinuous Saga Hellblade 2 and announced that the game will be digital only, no physical release. So following in the wake of Alan Wake 2, only coming out digitally for $50 on May 21st. So that will be the first big first-party game for Xbox this year, I guess. They also announced that the game will be approximately the same length as the original Hellblade, which I recall as being a fairly short game, like under 10 hours in length. So that kind of surprised me because I think the common expectation had been that this game would be bigger in length. They were going to try to blow it up into a much bigger game.
Yeah.
But when you look at that price tag and the digital-only release, I guess maybe that kind of fits with that this is not a 30-hour adventure. Which is also like, as an old person, OJ, as a fellow old person, who's not as good at video games as he used to be, and also doesn't have as much time to play video games as I used to. I look at that and go, actually, that's kind of nice.
Yeah.
Not
I love
every
a short
game has
game.
to be 50 hours.
Yeah.
I kind of like being able to beat stuff occasionally.
Yeah.
Those were the big games. They did show off a few other things as part of that. Let's see. There's a whole lot of news about industry layoffs, and we've kind of talked about this. And Game of the Year, we talk about it as well. This is obviously not happy news, but I think it's important news that we talk about as we talk about video games and the industry itself. We'll talk about a few of these here. Christina alluded to this earlier. Behavior Interactive, the makers of Dead by Daylight, have laid off 45 people from that studio. That's, again, always like sad. And it's interesting to think about what that means about Dead by Daylight. Does that mean Dead by Daylight is, it's shrinking in popularity? Is that why you lay off 45 people right now? And if it is, it also feels like that's the time you start revving up development on whatever your next big project is.
I think it's more, at least from my understanding of Behavior, they had a couple of other games sort of in the works that I think have fallen through. Like Dead by Daylight is actually pushing through, and they're continuously talking about how there are more and more numbers associated with that. And but I think it's the other games that they have been quote unquote working on. Because like the only game I know that they've released since Dead by Daylight was one that I don't even remember the name of it, but it lasted all of a couple of months, and then the popularity just swooped out. And so I guess it's hard when your first big game as a studio is so wildly popular. Like Dead by Daylight released in 2016, so it's been getting it right.
Right.
And I can't imagine trying to do other games when your first one was such a success. So that's why I think it is. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of essentially, like, it's hard to speak on it because I don't know if what I've heard is like rumor or
Right.
or if it's actually something that is, just because of the way that behavior also is so hush hush about particular things.
But I think that makes sense. Like the pressure, like you said, when your first thing, or even when your second or third thing is so big, like how do you follow that up?
Right.
And then,
What's the problem we've talked about before with Epic Games?
yeah,
Like, you have Fortnite, which is just a cash cow.
Yep.
Like, do you bother developing anything else? And they've sort of stopped developing anything else that's not in that Fortnite universe. So we talked about they launched those 3 new games at the end of last year, but they were all within the Fortnite world.
yeah.
And so, yeah, I imagine that's a real struggle. And this is the same thing that Naughty Dog, they shut down that live service Last of Us game that they were developing.
Yeah.
And part of their argument for that was, well, if we do this, this will be the only game we make going forward.
Yep.
Yeah.
It would have taken our entire studio. And so I wonder if Behavior Interactive is in a situation like that, that we can't afford, like, manpower wise or investment wise, to make something else and make this.
Yep.
So let's lay off these people who were working on these side projects because we just need to focus on
Yep.
Dead by Daylight. And that's sad. I mean, if that's the case.
For sure.
But we may be seeing that happen more and more with these studios doing live service games. Let's see. Discord has also laid off 17% of their staff, which is about 170 employees.
On a purely emotionless, like non-human level, just the fact that 17% was 170, I'm like, so they have exactly 1,000 employees? That is very satisfying.
These are the reported numbers that may
Yeah.
not be 100%
Like I said,
accurate.
and even if it was exact, like that's a emotionless,
Yeah.
non-empathy reaction.
Yeah, and it's one of those interesting things, right? Like, Discord is extremely popular. How's Discord, why do they need to lay off people? Like,
Yeah.
is Discord, I think it's always interesting because we assume because something's popular, it must be profitable.
Well, especially you think about Discord, like, on the one hand, I think Discord did get a boom when the pandemic started because there were a lot of people looking for ways to be in contact with each other.
Right.
And so, and especially, if you were a university student, you probably got Zoom, but if you weren't, what could you do? Well, hey, Discord. But I feel like Discord has continued. Like, I don't feel like it's like Zoom, where now a lot of universities have kind of pulled back on Zoom and are like, okay, use Teams or use whatever our in-house one is. I feel like I haven't seen Discord have that kind of pullback of people. I've seen more people move to Discord to be like, hey, our friend group, let's do a Discord channel.
Right.
So it is really interesting to see them laying people off.
Well, I think that ties into our next item on here, which is that Twitch laid off 35% of their staff, or announced they are laying off about 35%, which is about 500 employees for Twitch. And the thing I would say is, if you look at the tech industry more broadly, so not just the video game industry, Google is doing layoffs, Facebook is doing layoffs. Like, all these, Microsoft has done layoffs even outside the Xbox division. All of these companies are doing major layoffs right now. Like, it's a bloodbath in the tech industry. And what I have read from some people who follow this more closely is that once one of these companies starts, they all sort of join in because this is the one time that they can do it and it won't affect their stock price because everyone else is laying off 100 people here or 200 people there. So if you do that, you don't look like you're floundering or there's something desperately wrong. You just look like, oh, the entire industry is contracting a bit. And so it doesn't hurt your stock value nearly as much if you did this, 3
If
years
you were the
ago.
first one to do it.
Right. And which is very sort of dark when you think of it from that perspective. But I think it probably helps explain with some of these companies why it feels like, well, why are you cutting people right now? Like, you know, I will say Twitch is one of those companies that my understanding is that Twitch is not a particularly profitable company, if it's at all profitable. I don't know if it's ever reached profit, which is kind of weird when you think that they almost exclusively control the streaming market.
Yeah, I'll say I remember like a year and a half ago when people started moving away from Twitch for streaming to like stream more on YouTube because they were unhappy with Twitch. But other than that, like I don't. I guess maybe someone like streams games on Facebook Live, but like
Yeah.
I know that a couple of the streamers that I watch have started moving into like YouTube even.
Yeah.
Because YouTube has tried to add things that are more like Twitch, honestly, like being able to do the subscriptions that are like paid subscriptions, and the way that the donation stuff has changed on YouTube. It's just it's almost as if they're trying to get off of Twitch for various reasons. So,
yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the things, and I don't know the numbers on, Twitch's like view numbers and all of that, but there was that leak that came out of Twitch last year or 2 years ago that basically showed that most people who are streaming on Twitch are making less than minimum wage an hour. And this was like even some of the big streamers, right? It was like basically only the 1% or less, the 0.1% are actually making any real money off of Twitch. And so you have a lot of these people who have been streaming 8 hours a day, and they're making less than they'd make at McDonald's. And, also dealing with all the, just the psychological stress of being on for people and being accessible by people all the time. And so I wonder if there's been sort of a pullback from a lot of people in that regard. And obviously coming out of the lockdown, the pandemic, people don't have as much time to watch streamers. But that's still a huge number for Twitch.
For sure.
Still not as bad as our next one, which is Unity, which has laid off 25% or about 1,800 employees. This is less shocking because, as we talked about, Unity has been a complete disaster. Their move last fall to retroactively change their terms and charge people per install was a disaster.
That just felt like sabotage. Like the person who made that decision wanted them to go down, which is just awful.
And there's
that's 1,800 people.
Well, and there was speculation at the time too that was this happening because Unity was basically like losing so much money, and so they had to change something, and this was a desperate attempt to stay relevant and to stay profitable. And stay open as a company. But you see this, and it's hard to imagine you lay off 1 out of every 4 of your employees and that things hold together. I mean, can you imagine going into work on Monday and 1 out of every 4 of your coworkers is just gone?
I can't think of any job I've worked at that wouldn't fall apart in that situation.
Yeah, I mean, like we've seen what happened to Twitter over the last year. So this all plays into a bigger story, which is that, obviously 2023 was big on layoffs in the game industry. 2024 has started off really big on layoffs as well. So far, there have been over 3,100 employees laid off in the game industry in 2024. That's, 19 days, I think, right?
Yeah.
19 days into the year, and who knows?
Buck wild.
So a really bad time in the game industry, and that's a little confusing at the same time because, obviously games are selling fantastic. We're going to talk about that here in a few minutes anyway. People continue to buy video games. It's not like video games have fallen off a cliff in sales. So,
it's just it's disappointing when like it was such a good year for games, and yet such a bad year for the industry.
Yeah.
And it's like, there's got to be, I don't have the answer, but like, there's got to be a way to bring some of that success of like, it was such a good year for games. Can we make it a good year for the people who make games?
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure if I had that answer of how to do that, I would have $10 billion, but.
Well, I mean, when you have this many layoffs, it does, you're losing talent. Right?
Yeah.
Like there's this myth that when you do layoffs, you just fire the people who are the least talented. That's not how it works.
No.
Sometimes some of your best people are the people let go during layoffs. And mostly because the people who are doing the layoffs are sometimes doing it as cruelly as just looking at a list and crossing out names, like just randomly choosing names, which is sometimes what sends companies into chaos.
And sometimes companies will offer people like specific packages or something like, oh, you make more than most of the people here. If we lay you off, we'll give you this like 6 months or 8 month package or something like that. And so the people who are getting paid the most, who have been there the longest, who know the most, will take that and go somewhere else because they know they can get a job easy.
Yeah, so you lose your veterans, which is difficult, to continue running the company if you have all new people in there. Like, there's nothing wrong with new blood, but it's useful to have some people who can sit there and say, no, here's the reason we do it this way.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, bad time in the game industry. Hopefully it might slow down. It doesn't look like it will slow down anytime particularly soon. More PS4 games were sold in Europe last year than Xbox S or X games.
Wow.
I love that it's more PS4 games. Like, what about the PS5? Nah, Sony's still winning on the previous console.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of amazing. 2 consoles, 2 generations of that console are selling better than Xbox.
Yeah.
I wonder how much of this has to do with Game Pass. Because, like, again, I bought one game, but I've been playing all of these other games for free on Game Pass. Games that I probably would have spent money on if they weren't on Game Pass.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good argument because if you have an Xbox, it's kind of crazy not to have Game Pass with it.
Yeah.
Like, that is the sales point now. They've leaned very hard into that. And so it means people aren't buying as many games. And I wonder if that translates into not as many third-party games as well. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if they're buying those third-party games other places. Because that's generally what I do. If it's a third-party game, I'll buy it on PC or something rather than buy it on Xbox. This was kind of surprising and exciting news. PopCap has soft-launched Plants vs. Zombies 3 in the UK, Netherlands, and Philippines, and plan to release it worldwide later this year.
Maybe it's me, but I'm like, this just feels like random countries. Like the Netherlands and the Philippines. Okay.
So I know a lot of mobile developers do Australia, and I'm not sure.
Really?
Yeah, I'm not sure why that is, but I know Australia is very popular. And maybe because it's like very self-contained, that's the reasoning. But anyways, so this seems to be fairly common for mobile games to release them in a very limited area and see how they, sometimes even see if they take off, and sometimes they won't get a worldwide release. I can't imagine that's the case with Plants vs. Zombies 3. That's a big franchise.
I love a Plants vs. Zombie game, so
Right?
I'm excited.
No, that is exciting news.
Yeah, I'm excited for it. I have a fondness for PopCap. Like, their games were always like, there was a time each one of their new releases was like exciting. Like, it's Plants vs. Zombies, and then it's Peggle, and then it's like, and each one was like new and different and like those perfect sort of like chillaxing games.
Yeah.
And
I know I've seen some people get pretty stressed over Peggle.
And I knew the former PR director there. He's moved on to a different company now. I think he's been at a few different companies since then, but I did know the PR director there at one point and had a pretty decent relationship with him. So it's neat to see them putting out something new because it feels like it's been a while with PopCap.
Yeah.
2K has announced, speaking of other kind of exciting announcements, 2K has announced that they're releasing Top Spin 2K5 this year. I guess at 2K25 should be. So this is their tennis franchise. This franchise came about in the wake of Virtual Tennis when Sega released that back on the Dreamcast. And this was sort of their response to that. I have a soft spot for tennis games. I really like tennis games. I think Virtual Tennis is still like one of the best games to play.
I mean, tennis games are the reason we have Waluigi. So
Okay, you're making me rethink my love of tennis games. So I just think this is really I hope this returns to that arcade style gameplay. That's what I love about Virtual Tennis. It was easy to pick up and play. In college, we used to sit around and have tournaments playing this against each other. And it was like one of those great games where anyone could pick up and learn it really quick. And that's the sort of gameplay I really enjoy with those. So hopefully they return to that. Yeah, and so our last story here is Circana, which used to be NPD, and they changed their name. So they collect all the data about game sales each month and publish that. And you can pay thousands of dollars to subscribe to it. But they do release some of their information for free. And they have released their top 10 best-selling games of the year. And this kind of goes back to those layoffs. They said, as a whole, game sales only increased by 1% this year. So 1% sounds great until you start taking into account like what inflation has been.
Yeah.
And so game sales have gone up, but they haven't kept pace with inflation. So that may tie into what we're talking about with some of this. So it's not a disaster. Like every time you say anything negative about the game industry, people go, it's going to crash again. And it's like, it's not 1983. That's not going to happen again. Games are too diverse now. But it does help explain at least maybe why there's at least some hedging of bets with layoffs. But I thought we would talk about the top 10 because I always think this is pretty interesting. What games are people actually buying? And they're not necessarily the games that we're talking about. I will note that this does not include sales of some games. So, for example, Baldur's Gate 3, the publishers of that do not report their sales data.
I was wondering why it wasn't on here. Yeah.
And then also Nintendo does not report digital sales. So this is only physical sales. Whereas for all these other games, it is generally physical and digital. So keep that in mind when you look at I think there's only one Nintendo game in the top 10.
I was wondering about that. I was like, man, only one Nintendo. Okay, that makes sense.
I think Super Mario Wonder might have been number 12, and I think Mario Kart 8 Deluxe was number 20. But
continuing to blow my mind.
But then think, how are most people getting that game?
Digital.
Yeah, they're getting the Switch and getting a digital copy. So
that just continues to blow my mind how much Mario Kart 8 continues to sell.
Everyone at some point will own 3 copies of that game.
Yes. I actually think I own 3 copies of that game.
Can I have one?
I definitely owned it on the Wii U and then rebought it on the Switch. So I own at least 2 copies.
Yep.
But anyway, so at number 10 is EA Sports FC 24. So that's the former FIFA game with this new title.
I was like, what's FC?
Football Club.
Oh.
Okay.
Silly American.
I feel like we talked about that a long time ago, that name change.
We did. But I understand. I also have to think about it every time I see the new name. Star Wars Jedi Survivor at number 9. At number 8, Mortal Kombat 1. Thanks to OJ. That one Switch copy moved it up a spot. At number 7 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2. That's last year's game.
Yeah.
So last year's game came in number 7. At number 6 is Diablo 4. So we've kind of talked about how Diablo 4 kind of fell out of the talk a lot for Game of the Year. And I think this is a wake-up call to Diablo 4 still sold a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And that game is going to continue to sell for like the next 5 years.
Yeah.
Because that's how Diablo games always work.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yep.
At number 5 is The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Again, that includes no digital sales.
Wow.
So I don't know about you, OJ, but I bought that game digitally.
I have a physical copy.
Okay. So maybe up to half
Yeah.
of the copies
I was saying.
might have been so digitally. And number 4 is Marvel Spider-Man 2. So we have at least one copy here, Christina, for that. I have not bought a copy of that yet, and I was very excited for that game. I just ran out of time. So I will add a copy to that in 2024. At number 3 is Madden NFL 24. Madden, a perennial bestseller.
Yep.
They can just, repackage last year's game and slap a new title on it, and people will buy it. At number 2 is Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3. So that was the game released this year. So that was the number 2 best-selling game. That was the game that wasn't really a full game. It wasn't originally developed to be a whole new game. And at number 1 is Hogwarts Legacy, the Harry Potter game. This is the first non-Call of Duty or Rockstar game to top the U.S. sales in 15 years. So for the last 15 years, the best-selling game in the U.S. has always been a Call of Duty game or a Rockstar game. So Rockstar being the Grand Theft Auto people.
Yeah. I'm just like having flashbacks to when Frozen came out and Elsa became the most sold doll of the year and knocked Barbie off the top, the number 1 spot. I'm like, this is just dang.
It makes sense though because of how like the people I can't imagine the amount of people who don't consider themselves to be gamers that bought this game
Yeah.
because of it being Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on this podcast, we talked a lot about the controversy surrounding that and a lot of people refusing to buy the game or even some journalists refusing to cover the game because of J.K. Rowling's comments and beliefs. But I think, this is a symptom of always online,
Yeah.
right? Like we are talking as people who do a weekly podcast about video games, who follow this very intensely. And a couple of us as people who are in the queer rights movement, right? And so we're more keenly aware of this than the average person.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of people out there who don't know anything about J.K. Rowling's comments, or they've heard very in passing about her comments. What they saw was really pretty new Harry Potter game. And I get to explore Hogwarts, and I want to do that.
I get to be a part of it, which was, I think, is a huge part of the lore or the enticement of the whole franchise.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I remember my 11th birthday being like,
Yes, maybe I'll
please,
get a letter.
please. I know it won't happen, but please, because I know it's fantasy, but please.
And this gave folks the opportunity to actually be a part of it. So like it makes sense for all of the reasons why it's so popular, and why it's number 1 even.
We would have had 3 copies in my household if J.K. Rowling hadn't done it.
Absolutely.
Made those comments. And also, like, working a lot with the queer community, even a lot of people in the queer community don't know about her comments because, like, a majority of the people I know who did buy it are trans people who didn't necessarily know what's going on. And a good portion of trans people that I know have Harry Potter tattoos and stuff like that because they
that's
just
the thing,
relate
is,
to
like-
it so much. And so even with that, like they know the money's not going directly to J.K. Rowling, so they're like, well, I mean, still we can enjoy it. Death of the author, all of that stuff.
That was the big argument too that I heard was that but we're supporting the people who made the game, not J.K. Rowling herself, and I'm like,
Yeah. I know.
but yeah, there is. I mean, it's almost as if people are making excuses to buy the game, which I don't like to step on people's joy. So it's like hard to argue back with it, especially if they are trans, right? With those sorts of things.
I think it's really difficult because, so many people this is their childhood.
Yes.
It was really hard for me to not buy the game. I'm not
Me
going to
too.
lie. Like, I really wanted to.
Same.
And
And to like have grown up with that, like it'd be like if tomorrow George Lucas came out and said some horrible things.
Yeah.
And for
Yeah.
me, as somebody, you know, Star Wars was my Harry Potter,
yeah.
right? And I had Star Wars bed sheets when I was a kid, and you know, I had the Millennium Falcon and all that. And so, like, if George Lucas came out and said something horrible tomorrow, there's part of me that'd be like, well, one, George Lucas doesn't own Star Wars anymore. That's a little bit different, but it would be very hard, right? Like, it's like going back and, for me, going back and watching Buffy now.
Yeah.
Like, knowing how horrible of a person Joss Whedon is.
Yeah.
Somebody who I liked quite a bit.
Yeah.
yeah.
And, like, but that, there's such a bad taste there now. Like, I mean, I'm not going to support Joss Whedon going forward with new projects, but it does sire the feeling of going back and, you know, watching those old shows to some degree.
Yeah. And like Harry Potter is like 1 month and 2 days older than me. So like right exactly my age. Right. And you know, as I was reading through the books, like I got them all immediately as
Same.
soon as they came
Oh my
out.
gosh. Those are some of
loved
my
it.
favorite memories is like the midnight releases of
Yes.
those books.
Yeah.
Yeah, going with
And
my
movies.
friends dressed up as different characters, waiting in line like the nerds we were for,
Yeah.
for a book to drop. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, when book 7 came out, my family got we got the 3rd, 4th, 5th, and 6th copies sold at that bookstore.
Oh wow.
That way none of us would have to wait. We
Ah,
could all
yeah.
read our own copies. And then
Yeah.
when 2 of us finished, we donated one to the middle school library and one to the elementary school library.
That was sweet.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. And so very much into it. And, but yeah, like I can't support it until she dies. When she dies, then it's
Yeah.
still different.
Yeah. That sounds good. That's when I'll go to Universal, like do my nerd mecca.
So okay, let me tell you that. So the only time I went to Disney World with my ex-mother-in-law and my ex, we went, and I was so mad because it was a week before it opened.
Oh,
But they did a test day and opened it up, so we were the first set of people that went into it.
Oh, that's incredible.
Granted, they didn't get to do the ride I really wanted to do because it was
Yeah.
broke. Which good thing they opened it early so they
Yeah.
could figure that out. But it was so amazing. I was so excited about that. I know. And then like,
So I will say we went before her
Yeah.
comments and her beliefs were made public, and it's kind of overrated.
oh, is it?
It's cool. Don't get me
Yeah.
wrong. Like I'm very glad that we went, but it's the kind of thing that like once now that I've done it once, I don't feel a need to go back and do it again.
that's fair.
Yeah. Have you ever seen the offices of Epic Software, the company that makes the software that all the hospitals use? It's like their administrative software. They have a campus up in, I think it's in Madison, Wisconsin, or near
Boo.
Madison. But like,
I'm
anyways,
from Minnesota. I have to boo Wisconsin.
yes, we know. Oh no, we don't have a giant mall. Oh no. But anyways, they their campus is like insane. I mean, obviously every hospital uses their software just about, so they make tons of money. They have built parts of the Harry Potter world. Like they have Diagon Alley, and like offices are inside the buildings.
I would
And then
cry.
Their cafeteria is King's Crossing. And so, like, I'll have to send you a video because there's a really cool video of
Yes.
people touring it. But
I did cry when I went to King's Crossing in real life. So
So J.K. Rowling needs to die soon.
Yes. It sucks that that's, I mean, and this happens a lot, right? That's such an evil person. Invented such a, like, I don't know, touchstone for so many people.
And it's one of those difficult things, I think, for people to deal with. Because, I mean, OJ, you're talking about some trans people going, yeah, okay, I'm still going to play the game. And it's very much about, like, this individual choice of how do you deal with that personally?
yeah.
And, I mean, is there anything is it possible to be a conscientious person in a capitalist system?
I mean, Marx would say no. There's no ethical consumption under capitalism.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, because we're talking about going to Disney World.
Yeah.
Well, Walt Disney had some pretty heinous views as well.
Yeah.
He was anti-Semitic. He hated kids.
Yeah.
And, you know, so like, is it okay to go to Disney World only because he's dead now? Like, I mean, his family is still benefiting.
Well,
Yeah.
Disney still does some pretty, as a corporation, still does some pretty shady things.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
And
Like-
so as far as like the idea of the death of the author, once something goes from the author, it's not the authors anymore. It's whoever is reading it and ingesting the stuff.
Right.
And so I keep my memories of Harry Potter in thinking of that. But I still, like, even if it's 1/10 of a cent, I don't want anything going to J.K. Rowling. I mean, she's a billionaire. She won't notice anything at all.
Yeah.
But, like, it's to say I won't eat at Chick-fil-A even if I really, really, really want some nuggets and waffle fries. And every time I mention it, it's like, oh, I'm so hungry.
Yeah, dude.
And-
Like, I haven't had lunch yet, OJ.
yeah.
Only think about it on Sundays.
Yeah. And also, if you brine your chicken in pickle juice, it
Yes.
pretty much tastes like it. So,
And-
so
yep,
that's
yep.
fair. But so I pick and choose, not based on whether my money is going to them or not, but to what message I think it shows people.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's why I didn't buy Hogwarts Legacy,
sure.
even though I had been waiting for it before she made those like remarks and stuff.
Especially like for me, like doing queer activism, like a lot of my friends are trans, or the people that stand by me, they can buy the game, they can do whatever they want with it, but it's definitely that. No, I can't. Whereas other things, it's easier to ignore, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. Yeah.
Yeah, well, like, you know, you guys were both here when I did my show. You weren't here yet, but one of the big things with that was like J.K. Rowling for me. When I was a kid, she was the first like, oh my gosh, strong woman in the real world, like
Yeah.
famous author, everything I wanted to be. And so like having all that fall apart.
Yeah.
Like, why do you have to be a terrible person? Can't you just be better?
Just die.
Yeah.
I think part of the issue is that she's also out there continually saying this stuff.
Yes.
Yeah. It's
Like
like if she would change, if she would
Yeah.
learn.
Or the fact that she like is, I don't know, antagonizing it, if that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you continue to boycott me and I continue to be a billionaire,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Because I feel like I have on several occasions been like, why doesn't she just shut up?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, obviously, this is not going over the way that you intend it. Like, and I kind of feel like had she made her initial comment and then just like not talked anymore, that a lot of people would have just went on and moved past
But
it.
she wrote an essay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, she's made multiple comments
Yeah.
on Twitter. Like every time something new comes up, like a friend and I share them with each other, and we're like, "What is wrong with her?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, she wrote a literal essay
it's-
about it.
Yeah.
Like, not just she
it's
wrote a lot.
it's horribly hilarious. You know, one of the people who I'm very close to, who is a J.K. Rowling defender, will be like, "Oh, you know, I don't think she would make those comments if she. I think that everyone who she's met who is trans or queer, like, has had, you know, bad experiences, and like she's making these comments based on that." And I'm like, if she would just listen to literally anyone,
Right.
like,
Yeah.
But when you're rich, you don't have to listen to anyone
Yeah.
anymore.
Exactly.
I mean, I actually think that's part of the problem, right? That's the problem with Elon Musk.
yeah.
You're that rich, you don't have to listen to anyone else anymore.
And it's disappointing because, like, she is, like, one of the only people I can name who, when she first got rich, it was not through exploiting people. It was through writing an incredible book series. It wasn't through exploiting workers.
Well, I mean, the house elves, she exploited.
True.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Just,
yeah.
she could have stayed such a good person.
we don't mean to get off on a big tangent here, but like I do think it's important. Like this is probably the last time we'll talk about Hogwarts Legacy on this podcast. But I do think it's important to like address these sorts of issues because these are issues that real people are dealing with when it comes to video games and how they interact with video games.
For sure.
All right, that does it for the news this week. That brings us to our big question. And our big question this week comes from our loyal listener, one of our loyal listeners, not our only one, hopefully, but at least one of our loyal listeners, Derek. If you want to suggest a big question, you can email us at justin.young@sau.edu. Derek actually sent us a few, so we'll probably use those over the next few weeks. But we'll start off with this one. Do you have any video game related tattoos? If yes, what of and where? You can skip that second part if it's not something you want to share. If no, if you had to get one, what would you pick and where?
Okay.
So,
as the most tattooed person, I was actually trying to like go through because after a while, there's a few that you forget you have, especially if they're on parts of your body that you don't look at often. I actually don't, but I have talked about getting one. In true style, I guess, of what is going to be my role on this podcast. I've thought about getting a DBD perk, a Dead by Daylight perk, where specifically adrenaline, because adrenaline is one of Meg's perks. Meg is one of the like very first survivors of the game, and adrenaline is a perk that has a picture of like an anatomical heart on it, and the whole perk is that if once the gates are up, you are filled with so much adrenaline that you bump up a state. So if you are in the dying state, like lying on the ground, you bump up and now you're in the injured state. If you're in the injured state, the adrenaline takes you up to the healed state. So I don't know, just as kind of a metaphor for like I'll push through. I don't know. Like I can make it. Like I don't know. But yeah, so I've actually thought about it. I have a lot of cartoon tattoos on my body, but no video games yet.
what do you have that's a cartoon?
So I have a whole half sleeve on my left arm that's Roald Dahl. Speaking of another potentially controversial that is just Roald Dahl illustrations, like Matilda's in the center, and then I have like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory and the Trunchbull and James and the Giant Peach. So have that. I have Ariel on one calf, Ursula on the other. I have a reference to Jurassic Park.
The dichotomy of man.
Yeah,
Ariel and Ursula.
basically, yeah. And like it's not Ursula's face; it's actually my face because my tattoo artist is insane. I have rose quartz, but it's a pinup of rose quartz on my left thigh. So yeah, I have like lots of different cartoons. I'm surprised I don't have any video game ones yet.
Okay. OJ, I know you have some tattoos. Do you have any video game related tattoos?
I do not, but I'm very glad this question was asked because I have two ideas for tattoos that I'm going to get now that I actually have money. But these are ideas that I've had for a long time.
Okay.
But I want two sleeves. One of my sleeves is at least part of it is going to be Kefka's tower with all of the characters from Final Fantasy VI going up.
That's going to hurt,
And
but that's
around.
going to be worth it.
Oh, I know.
With the Moogle.
Yeah,
that would be so great.
I want all of the characters in there, and then just have like Kefka at the top that they're doing. So that'll probably be half of the sleeve. The other half, I was thinking about just other random characters from video games that I enjoyed, or ones that I play a lot. You know, like I'll probably have Peach.
Yeah.
I'll probably have Jinx from Pokemon.
I wish my artist was here because essentially I just gave her illustrations from Roald Dahl's like books and been like, these are the ones I want, and she designed the whole. It's nice. It is gorgeous. Nice.
Yeah. Charlotte from Castlevania. I'll probably have. And I don't know who else, but they'll be like I'll sit down and think about it once I'm getting it.
Waluigi.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely, 100%.
Well, peach.
Look, we have the concept art. You could get what Peach.
I was gonna say I saw a meme and it was Daisy talking to Peach and Daisy was like, "Oh, haha, isn't it weird that we don't have any of the WA characters?" And then Peach looked at Daisy like, but, and then it showed a upside down P was a D, like a flip.
Oh my gosh.
And but. Yeah, so that'll be the video game arm. The other arm, I want to do a sleeve of different pinups of Marvel superheroes. So I'm definitely going to have Captain America, Thor. I'm not the biggest fan of Iron Man, but I appreciate Iron Man.
I was about to say, but
yeah.
a pinup of Iron Man.
Yeah, Hulk.
Oh.
Yeah, and a few. Let's see, Bucky definitely. I mean, Bucky and Captain America will probably be pinups right next to each other and maybe making out. We'll see. We'll see what that is. Yeah, I know. And let's see, Black Panther. And so a lot of a lot of them from the MCU Phase 1.
Yeah.
And some of the other, or the first phase, like all the way through Endgame, I'll probably have Ant-Man definitely. And then so I just want all.
You need to have Ant-Man small.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. And then if I have Thanos there, he could be flying right up to Thanos to kill him. And but yeah, we'll see. And I've always loved the idea of male pinups because you almost never see them.
Yeah. They're glorious though. The few tattoos I've seen of male pinups are so good.
And a while ago, I shared somebody drew pictures of all of them. That's where I got the idea for this
That would
pinups.
be lovely.
And I'm not a super fan of DC all that much, but maybe Jason Momoa Aquaman and Henry Cavill Superman.
Okay.
I might get them.
Not Henry Cavill, The Witcher?
Well, I mean, that he might be one of them on the video game. Even though I never played the video games, but I know that
You'll have Henry Cavill on both arms.
Yeah. In fact, my back piece.
Dichotomy of man.
I just have a back piece of Henry Cavill. Well, no, because I wouldn't be able to see it. I'll get a chest piece of Henry
There you
Cavill so
go.
I can see it.
I think you also
And get the really bad mustache, but then remove it really terribly.
Well, I'm hairy, so I could just shave it and then let it go in, and shave it and let it go in.
I feel like you also need to save space on the video game arm for the Baldur's Gate bear.
Oh, absolutely.
You could put it in drag, and that could be the centerpiece. I'm gonna help you with it. No.
And Agatha Harkness, definitely. I will.
Yeah.
There you go.
I will.
You need that.
Yeah. She's going to have her own. Like, I might have, like, a large Agatha Harkness, and then all the pinups are a little smaller. But she's my favorite. I'm very excited that this year we're getting the Covenant Chaos.
Yeah.
Whatever that show's going to end up being called. They've changed the
Yeah.
name 6 times.
House of Harkness.
Agatha all along.
yeah.
That's what it. That just.
Yeah.
Just keep it that.
I wrote my own version that I can't sing on this podcast for my sister.
Oh yeah. So that's where your name comes. I don't know why I didn't catch that, but anyway.
I'll send you the song.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Alicia.
Yeah.
Alicia, do you have any tattoos?
I don't have any tattoos
Okay.
at all. My mom has made me promise to wait until she's dead.
I've known so many mothers who've done that.
But I think if I were to get a video game one, it would probably be. I think maybe like getting the original Keyblade,
Yeah.
like on my wrist or like the inside of my forearm or something. Just because like the Kingdom Hearts games were so important to me and my sister, and so like getting the Keyblade, also. At some point I do plan to get, because of my own mental health struggles, I plan to get the semicolon on the inside of my wrist. And so like having the Keyblade right there as well, as cheesy as the Kingdom Hearts' light line is, I think that it would tie in nicely to that for me and tie into all those good memories with my sister. So I would probably do that. And if I did a second one, probably something Kirby, because again, Kirby just sparks joy.
Yeah.
We've talked so much about Hogwarts being a touchstone for folks. I have a feeling Kingdom Hearts is the same way. At least it was for me. Because it was huge in my house. Huge.
Yeah.
I think we have talked about before,
yeah.
like how big that game is, particularly for a lot of, female gamers like that, that game. And it always surprises me when I talk to some people and they're like, oh, I'm so in love with Kingdom Hearts. And it's somebody that I don't know plays many video games. And they're like, I'm obsessed with it. Like, how many of the games have you played? And I'm like, you're going to be very disappointed. But like,
well, and even like, I don't think I really played beyond Kingdom Hearts 2.
yeah.
Like I played a little bit of Birth by Sleep,
I didn't.
but
well, who can
I
keep
didn't-
all that straight?
yeah.
I
It's
watched
like-
them all being played, but
it's
I
like-
never played them.
Part of it is me not having the systems for them, but I think just there's something so special to me about specifically Kingdom Hearts 2 for me, because these were the days when we got 30-minute turns playing video games, and so my sister played 1 and I played 2. But yeah,
That's sweet because it's not just a love of the game, but it's also something to remind you of your sister.
yeah.
Okay, so I don't have any tattoos. So, and I'm probably not getting any tattoos anytime soon, but I did try to think of what I would get. And so I came up with 2 ideas. The first one is Birdo from Super Mario Brothers 2. And so what I was thinking is Birdo, when you fight Birdo, has the crystal ball in her belly. And so you defeat her and she spits it out and everything. So I was thinking okay, I could get her on my stomach and and her stomach could be like my belly button.
Oh my gosh. I love it.
That would work well for
I love it. 10 out of
Birdo.
10.
And then my other idea is basically using the same joke. And I thought King Hippo from Punch Out. Because King Hippo, you punch him in the stomach, and that's how
Yes.
he drops his pants, and you can punch him in the face and everything. So I thought King Hippo and his stomach would be at my belly button. Or maybe his mouth, because he opens his mouth in a
Yep.
big circle when you punch him in the stomach. So I was thinking one of those. It would be something kind of goofy like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It would be
Yeah.
something kind of fun. One of those characters that doesn't have a great deal of emotional meaning to me, but I love those characters because of
Yeah.
playing them when I was a kid. and that
So
experience.
much for me for tattoos is that the story that surrounds them. The one that I love telling the story about is the fact that I have an ostrich with oh shoot, what is it?
Allegedly.
Allegedly underneath it. And the reason OJ's laughing is because it's from Letterkenny. And when I was getting the tattoo, I didn't know what Letterkenny was. I had never seen it. I just thought an ostrich with allegedly underneath was so funny. If you don't know what that means, you need to go watch it because I'm not going to explain it on a podcast, right? But just know that I have an ostrich with allegedly underneath, and I love to tell that story because it's for folks who have never had tattoos. I'm like, this is why you need to make sure that you research what you put on your body permanently, especially because I have pieces about being a queer prude. So the fact that I have an ostrich that means what it does on my body, is kind of a thing. So, yeah.
OJ's losing it right now.
It's a great tattoo.
It is. And it's my favorite story about anyone getting a tattoo ever.
It certainly beats those people who get Chinese characters and they're like, it means hope, and you find out it means
It means
half
bucket.
off or
Yeah.
something. Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for this week's episode. But before we do cut out and everything, I do want to address obviously OJ leaving real quick here. I want to issue a personal thank you to OJ when the idea for this podcast was originally bouncing around in my head. I didn't know who would do this podcast. I didn't know what this podcast would exactly be. And I thought, was there anyone that I know who would be interested in this. And OJ was the one person that I knew was into video games in the department. And I was like, well, that's cool. OJ is easy enough to talk to and everything. So let's see if they're interested in doing this. And OJ came on board, and then I think you had suggested it, both Ryan and Alicia. But like I think at the same time, Alicia had emailed out to the grad students about doing the women's center or women's conference talk, and so you had reached out about that. So it kind of came together, quite organically, but it was always useful to have OJ there as like kind of a founding member and everything, and helping to like pull that together to start off with. So I just want to give the credit where the credit is due, that like this podcast may not have come together without OJ's like input and help in that. And so they definitely deserve a big part of the credit of getting this off the ground. And of course, the exciting part now is what I had always hoped would happen with this podcast, which is that we're bringing in new people, and like we're getting to like give different people like a chance to talk about games, and that's pretty exciting to me. This is not, 2 years later after starting this podcast, we're getting to where we had originally talked about it being someday, and that's really exciting.
Absolutely, and this has really been one of the highlights of my grad school career. I've had many highlights, but this is definitely one of them, and I really appreciate you bringing me on board, Justin. It's just been really fun. I've really, really enjoyed recording this, and I look forward to listening to it more rather than just being a part of it.
Yeah, and you're always welcome to write in, justin.young. That's how you if you want to send us questions or comments or harass Mario or something. I feel like Mario took the place of Ryan, and like you need someone new to harass.
Yeah, I'll meet him out in the parking lot and we'll see.
But yeah, it's been a great 2 years doing this, and obviously you're not going away. Yeah. You'll still be around. We'll still be able to interact with you. But obviously this is maybe our last chance to say it on here and everything. We wish you the best, and obviously good luck on finishing your dissertation. We're very excited about that, and it's just been it's been a cool experience to do this with you. So thank you.
Thank you.
But also thank you to Christina, our newest member. So she will be sliding into OJ's seat and when Mario returns. And so, again, that changing dynamic's really cool. It makes it exciting to come in and do this. Thank you, obviously, Alicia, one of our founding members, the only other founding member who's left with me at this point.
Yeah. I'm sticking around another year. You're stuck with me.
I am excited to hear that, actually. I was like, it's going to be really weird if all of them leave in the same year. But like, that's exciting to have you on board. And I look forward to like, obviously this whole semester, a whole spring semester laid out ahead of us. Again, if you're listening to this, the Game of the Year podcast, that'll all go up starting Monday. We also have individual lists that'll be going up on the website. We'll post that onto social media, but it's really exciting to have all of that and have different, voices coming out and talking about their favorite games of the year. Thank you for listening. We will be back next week with a whole new episode. Until then, OJ, I believe it's your honor to sign us off this one final time.
Thank you all for listening, and this one's for you, Derek. Chaos!